Yeah, so the word citizen is Greek. It means co-ruler, co-sovereign, co-king. And so America is an experiment of a polarity change in the flow of power. Instead of the default setting of top down by a gang leader king, it's bottom up by we the people. It's the difference between a dead pyramid and a living tree, where every root and every tiny capillary root sucks in nutrients to keep the tree alive. But now where this idea came from is interesting. So you had, wherever there's a king, the kingdom has to believe what the king believes. You know, Nebuchadnezzar, when I blow my trumpet, you bow to my statue, and even King Henry VIII, right? He's burning, killing Sir Thomas More on one side and killing William Tyndale on the other side. And so what the king believes, the kingdom had to believe. And in 1517, Martin Luther starts the Reformation. But let's fast forward to 1572. You have the King of Spain controls the Netherlands, and you have Protestants called Dutch Reformed. And the King of Spain doesn't like that, and so he sends the Iron Duke of Alba, and he commits the Spanish Fury, and he kills 10,000 in Antwerp, Holland, and leaves their bodies in the streets. The same year, 1572, that was a bad year, the Queen of France, Catherine de' Medici, does not like the fact that 10% of France is Huguenot. And so she organizes a wedding of her daughter Margaret with the main Huguenot leader, Henry of Navarre. And a couple days after the wedding, she has them pull chains across the streets so the carriages cannot ride out of town. And she sends her soldiers house to house. They kill 30,000.
Wow. And
they throw their bodies in the Seine River. It's called the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. And so Romans 13 says what? Let everyone be subject to the governing authority, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. It's like, yeah, but what if the authority that exists wants to kill your wife and kids and throw their bodies in the river?
I don't want to be subject to that authority.
Yeah, and so it's sort of like Ephesians 6, children obey your parents. But what if there's a bad parent who tells the kid to sell themselves into prostitution?
No.
Is the child supposed to obey that? No. The child obeys the parent as long as the parent's telling them to do something that lines up with God's word.
In the Lord, yes.
Yeah, you obey the government as long as the government's telling you to do something that lines up with God's word. Why would God tell you to do something in his word and then tell you to submit to a government that tells you not to do what he just got done telling you to do? And it's like Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. He says, we're obligated to obey the just laws, we're obligated to disobey unjust laws. How does one determine if a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. So you obey the government as long as the government's telling you to do something that lines up with God's word.
Well, on that, military. Just and unjust orders. If it lines up with the Constitution, you have to obey it. In an unjust order, you have to disobey it.
Yeah, that's the My Massacre. So here you have these Calvinist Puritans, Reformation, and they're coming up with a form of government for us to rule ourselves without a king. It's called the covenant form of government. And they got their idea from ancient Israel, that first 400 years out of Egypt before King Saul. So the kings of England looked to the Bible, but they looked to the King Saul and on. The Calvinist Puritans, Baptist Presbyterians that founded America looked to the pre-King Saul period, millions of people that just come out of Egypt, and for 400 years there's no king. Everyone's taught the law and accountable to God to follow it.